It is impossible in this world that we live in today to think of the banking world without thinking of the Rothschild family. In my last video on the New World Order, I covered the life of Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati. One thing that is not commonly known is his association and subsequent funding by Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the founder of the Rothschild dynasty. During this video, it will become clear to you how the association of Adam Weishaupt and Mayer Amschel Rothschild created great success for the ideology of the Bavarian Illuminati and the establishment of the programs necessary to begin the path towards a new world order and a one world government. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born on the 23rd of February 1744. He was born in the free imperial city of Frankfurt, the Holy Roman Empire. He lived to the age of 68 and died on the 19th of September 1812. Amschel Rothschild had 9 children, 4 daughters and 5 sons. These sons would later go on to establish an unrivaled banking dynasty that would control the banking systems throughout the rest of the world. His children were Schonke Jeanette Rothschild, Amschel Mayer von Rothschild, Solomon Mayer von Rothschild, Nathan Mayer von Rothschild, Isabella Rothschild, Babette Rothschild, Karl Mayer von Rothschild, Julie Rothschild, Henriette Rothschild, and James Mayer the Rothschild. The mention of these names will not go in vain, as I will explain their intricate association with many of the influential and important families in the world up until today. Mayer Rothschild was best known as a German Jewish banker and the founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty. It was not called a dynasty for no reason. Now that the pleasantries are over, I would like to take a much closer look at this family under a magnifying glass. Mayer's actual birth name was Mayer Amschel Bauer, the son of Moses Amschel Bauer, a moneylender and the proprietor of a counting house. Mayer was a court Jew to the Landgraves of Hesse-Kassel in the Free City of Frankfurt and was the first known prominent banker in the family. Moses Amschel Bauer, his father, placed a red sign above the entrance door to his counting house. This sign is a red hexagram, which geometrically and obviously numerically translate into the number 666, which under the Rothschild instructions will end up on the Israeli flag some 2 centuries later. Seeing that Mayer's father worked in a counting house, he grew a liking towards banking and banking systems, and especially money. During the decade from the 1760s, Mayer Amschel Bauer works for a bank owned by the Oppenheimers. I hope that surname sounds familiar. This bank operated in Hanover, Germany. He was highly successful and soon became a junior partner. Well, while he was working at the bank, he became acquainted with General von Estorff. Following his father's death, Bauer returns to Frankfurt. This is now Amschel Mayer Rothschild, but remember, he was actually Bauer. He returns to Frankfurt to take over his father's business. Bauer recognizes the significance of the red hexagram and changes his name from Bauer to Rothschild. The Rothschild name refers to the red hexagram or sign signifying 666 hanging over the entrance door, with Roth being German for red, Schild is German for sign, so the red sign or Rothschild. Now Mayer Amschel Rothschild discovers that General von Estorff is now attached to the court of Prince William the Ninth of Hesse-Hanau, one of the richest royal houses in Europe, which gained its wealth by the hiring out of Hessian soldiers to foreign countries for vast profits. This practice practically still happens today by peacekeeping troops being shipped throughout the world. Remember that peacekeeping is all but the purpose of these troops. He makes the general's reacquaintance on the pretext of selling him valuable coins and trinkets at discounted prices. As per his plans, his acquaintance with the general soon paid off, and he was subsequently introduced to Prince William himself, who is more than pleased with the discounted prices that Amschel was charging for his rare coins and trinkets. And Rothschild offered him a bonus for any other business that the prince can direct his way. This concept of bonuses for business would soon turn the Rothschild dynasty into one of the most powerful families in the world. Rothschild very soon became close associates with Prince William and ends up doing business with him and other members of the court. During this time, he very soon discovered that loaning money to governments and to royal families is much more profitable than loaning to individuals, because the loans could be much bigger and are secured by the nation's taxes. This concept is key to all future transactions that the Rothschilds would do. They knew that no matter what, they would always get their money back, as the people themselves were paying for those loans. And I want you to please remember this with regards to all the loans that our government is currently making, especially the loans that Cyril Ramaphosa has asked for. In 1769, Meyer Amschel Rothschild makes a very big breakthrough. He is given permission by Prince William to hang a sign on the front of his business premises, where he could declare that he is M.A. Rothschild, by appointment court factor to His Serene Highness Prince William of Hanau. In 1770, the plot starts to thicken. Meyer Amschel Rothschild draws up plans for the creation of the Illuminati, and he entrusts his good friend that I did the previous video on, Adam Weishaupt, who was outwardly a Roman Catholic, with its organization and development. Remember that Adam Weishaupt was actually born a Jew. In 1776, Adam Weishaupt officially completes his assignment in organizing the Bavarian Illuminati on the 1st of May of that year. The purpose of this Illuminati was to divide people through political, economic, social, and religious means. The opposing sides were to be armed, and incidents were to be provided in order for them to fight among themselves, destroy national governments, destroy religious institutions, and eventually destroy each other. Weishaupt soon infiltrates the Continental Order of the Freemasons with this Illuminati doctrine and establishes lodges of the Grand Orient to be their secret headquarters. This was all under the orders and finance of Meyer Amschel Rothschild, and the concept has spread and is followed within Masonic lodges worldwide to this very present day. As we know, Adam Weishaupt also helped recruit 2,000 paid followers, including the most intelligent men in the field of arts and letters, education, science, finance, and industry. And these various people recruited become very important if you look at the specific industries that were targeted. They were instructed to follow the following methods in order to control people. 1. Use monetary and sex bribery to obtain control of men already in high places, in the various levels of all governments and other fields of endeavor. Once these influential persons had fallen for the lies, deceits, and temptations of the Illuminati, they were to be held in bondage by application of political and other forms of blackmail, threats of financial ruin, public exposure, and fiscal harm, even death to themselves and loved members of their families. 2. The faculties of colleges and universities were to cultivate students possessing exceptional mental ability belonging to well-bred families with international leanings, and recommend them for special training in internationalism, or rather the notion that only a one-world government can put an end to recurring wars and strife. Such training was to be provided by granting scholarship to those selected by the Bavarian Illuminati. The third thing they aimed for: all influential people trapped into coming under the control of the Illuminati, plus the students who had been specially educated and trained, were to be used as agents and placed behind the scenes of all governments as experts and specialists. This was so they would advise the top executives to adopt policies which would in the long run serve the secret plans of the Bavarian Illuminati, a one-world conspiracy, and bring about the destruction of the governments and religions they were elected or appointed to serve. The fourth point, to obtain absolute control of the press. At that time, the only mass communication media which distributed information to the public, so that all news and information could be slanted in order to make the masses believe that a one-world government is the only solution to our many and varied problems. A brilliant plan indeed. The Bavarian Illuminati plans were about to kick into full swing, and Meyer Amschel Rothschild was fully behind it all, as he knew that he could financially benefit greatly from all of these plans. In 1784, Adam Weishaupt issues his order for the French Revolution to be started by the Maximilian Robespierre in book form. The interesting incident, when this book was written by one of Weishaupt's associates, Xavier Zwack, and sent by courier from Frankfurt to Paris, and remember, it was intercepted. In my last video, I actually had a picture of the coach and the interception. However, en route there, the courier is struck by lightning. The book detailing this plan was discovered by the police and handed over to the Bavarian authorities. This definitely proved to be a momentous occasion, thwarting many of the Bavarian Illuminati's plans. As a consequence of the police discovering this book, the Bavarian government orders the police to raid Weishaupt's Masonic lodges of the Grand Orient and the homes of his most influential associates. Clearly, the Bavarian authorities were convinced that the book that was discovered was a very real threat by a private group of influential people to use wars and revolutions to achieve their political ends. In 1785, the Bavarian government outlaws the Illuminati and closes all the Bavarian lodges of the Grand Orient. Meyer Amschel Rothschild has to flee with his family, and they move their home to a 5-story house in Frankfurt, which he shares with the Schiff family. Soon the details of this plot of the Bavarian Illuminati will be revealed, and the Bavarian government published the details of the Illuminati plot in a document entitled The Original Writings of the Order and Sect of the Illuminati. By this it is clear that the Bavarian government considered the Illuminati to be a religious sect. The Bavarian government then decided to send these documents to all the heads of churches and of states throughout Europe, but sadly their warnings were ignored. Due to the ignorance of many of the European leaders to the Bavarian government's warning, the Illuminati plan for a French Revolution succeeded from 1789 to 1793. As I said earlier, this revolution would be a banker's dream, and Meyer Amschel Rothschild knew that he would make an absolute fortune. This French Revolution established a new constitution and passed laws that forbade the Roman Church from levying tithes or taxes, and also removed its exemption from taxation. The irony in this act that many people would probably agree with is that all the power was now handed over to one man and his family. Meyer Amschel Rothschild famously said, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." The Rothschilds got control of a nation's money through Alexander Hamilton. That was their agent in George Washington's cabinet when they set up a central bank in the USA called the First Bank of the United States. This is established with a 20-year charter. In 1798, John Robertson publishes a book entitled Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in the secret meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and reading societies. In this book, Professor Robertson of the University of Edinburgh, one of the leading intellects of his time, who in 1783 was elected General Secretary of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, gave details of the whole Rothschild Illuminati plot. He advised how he had been a high-degree Mason in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry and had been invited by Adam Weishaupt to Europe, where he had been given a revised copy of Weishaupt's Conspiracy. However, although he pretended to go along with it, Professor Robertson did not agree with it, and therefore published his aforementioned book. The book included details of the Bavarian government's investigation into the Illuminati and the French Revolution. That same year, on July the 19th, David Papin, president of Harvard University, lectured the graduating class on the influence Illuminism was having on American politics and religion. At this stage, I want to ask you to please watch the first video I did on the New World Order and Adam Weishaupt. Please subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon so that you can get notifications on new videos. In the first video, I cover in detail the concept of Illuminism. So if you don't have a proper understanding, this video will perfectly explain the concept to you. At the age of 21, Nathan Meyer Rothschild leaves Frankfurt for England, where, with a large sum of money given to him by his father, he sets up a banking house in London. Nathan would be the first of the 5 Rothschild sons to actually leave his home and go to establish banking systems in other countries. In 1806, Napoleon states that it is his objective to remove the House of Hesse-Kassel from rulership and to strike it out of the list of powers. On hearing this, Prince William IX of Hesse-Hanau flees Germany, goes to Denmark, and entrusts his fortune, valued at $3 million at that time, to Meyer Amschel Rothschild for safekeeping. Going back to England now, Sir Francis Baring and Abraham Goldsmith die. This left Nathan Meyer Rothschild, the first of the Rothschild sons, to go to England as the only remaining banker of England. In that same year, Solomon Meyer Rothschild goes to Vienna, Austria, and sets up the bank M. von Rothschild und Schonner, which means Rothschilds and Son. Now, back in America, in 1811, the charter for the Rothschilds Bank of the United States runs out. Remember, there was only a 20-year period provided, and Congress votes against its renewal. Nathan Meyer Rothschild is not amused, and he states, either the application for renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself involved in a most disastrous war. Take note of the time, 1811. However, the United States stands firm and the charter is not renewed, which causes Nathan Meyer Rothschild to issue another threat. Teach those impudent Americans a lesson. Bring them back to colonial status. In 1812, backed by Rothschild's money and Nathan Meyer Rothschild's orders, the British declare war on the United States. The Rothschilds' plan was to cause the United States to build up such a debt in fighting this war that they would have to surrender to the Rothschilds and allow the charter for the Rothschild-owned First Bank of the United States to be renewed. In the end, many people died just for money. Rothschild's money. When Meyer Amschel Rothschild dies in 1812, in his will he laid out a specific law and other laws that the House of Rothschild were to follow. All key positions in the family business were only to be held by family members. Only male members of the family were allowed to participate in the family business. It is important to note that Meyer Amschel Rothschild also have 5 daughters, which I've mentioned before. So today the spread of the Rothschild dynasty without the Rothschild's name is far and wide. This is a very important concept to understand. Because of the 9 children, this dynasty has gripped most of the world. The family was to intermarry with its first and second cousins to preserve the family fortune. Of the 18 marriages by Meyer Amschel Rothschild's grandchildren, 16 were between first cousin, a practice known today as inbreeding. No public inventory of his estate was to be published. No legal action was to be taken with regard to the value of the inheritance. The eldest son of the eldest son was to become the head of the family. This condition could only be overturned when the majority of the family agreed otherwise. This rule was immediately applied, And it was immediately the case that Nathan Meyer Rothschild was elected head of the family following his father, Meyer Amschel Rothschild's death. In that same year, Jacob Meyer Rothschild goes to Paris, France, to set up the Banque de Rothschild Frères. Now to get back to 1814 and what happened to Prince William IX, $3 million that he handed to Amschel Rothschild for safekeeping. According to legend, this money was hidden away in wine casks and escaping the search of Napoleon's soldiers when they entered Frankfurt was restored intact in the same casks in 1814, when the elected Prince William IX of Hesse-Hanau returned to the electorate of Germany. Now, this is what was supposed to happen. The facts are a bit less romantic and more businesslike. It was indicated that the money was never returned by the Rothschilds to Prince William IX of Hesse-Hanau. It goes on to state that Nathan Meyer Rothschild invested this $3 million in gold from the East Indian Company, knowing that it would be needed for Wellington's Peninsular Campaign. On the stolen money, Nathan made no less than 4 profits. On the sale of the Wellington's paper, which he bought at 50 cents on the dollar, on the sale of gold to Wellington, on its repurchase, and then on forwarding it to Portugal. In 1815, the 5 Rothschild brothers worked to supply gold to both Wellington's army through Nathan in England and Napoleon's army through Jacob in France, and begin their policy of funding both sides in wars. The Rothschilds love wars because they are massive generators of risk-free debt. And this is because, as I said earlier, that they are guaranteed by the government of a country, and therefore the efforts of the populations of that country. And it doesn't matter if that country loses the war, because the loans are given on the guarantee that the victor will honor the debts of the vanquished, which means that those who are left behind has to carry the burden for the Rothschilds. While the Rothschilds are funding both sides in this war, they use the banks they have spread out across Europe to give them the opportunity to set up an unrivaled postal service network of secret routes and fast couriers. The post these couriers carried was to be opened up by these couriers and their details given to the Rothschilds, so they always were one step ahead of current events. Talk about a very clever intelligence structure. Besides that, these Rothschild couriers were the only merchants allowed to pass through the English and French blockades. It was these couriers who also kept Nathan Meyer Rothschild up to date with how the war was going, so he could use that intelligence to buy and sell from his position on the stock exchange in accordance with that intelligence. And yet today they want to control how people trade in stocks, and they want everything to be transparent. One of the Rothschild's couriers was a man named Rothworth. When the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo was won by the British, Rothworth took off for the Channel and was able to deliver this news to Nathan Meyer Rothschild a full 24 hours before Wellington's own courier. That time British pounds were called consols, and they were traded on the floor of the stock exchange. Nathan Meyer Rothschild instructed all his workers on the floor to start selling consols. They made all the other traders believe that the British had lost the war, so they started selling frantically. Therefore, the consols plummeted in value, which was when Nathan Meyer Rothschild discreetly instructed his workers to purchase all the consols they could lay their hands on. When the news came through that the British had actually won the war, the consols went up to a level even higher than before the war ended, leaving Nathan Meyer Rothschild with a return of approximately 20-1 on his investment. This one event gave the Rothschild family complete control of the British economy, now the financial center of the world following Napoleon's defeat, and forced England to set up a new Bank of England, which Nathan Meyer Rothschild controlled. Interestingly, 100 years later, the New York Times would run a story stating that Nathan Meyer Rothschild's grandson had attempted to secure a court order to suppress publication of a book which had this insider trading story in it. The Rothschild family claimed the story was untrue and libelous, but the court denied the Rothschilds' request and ordered the family to pay all court costs. They were obviously guilty as charged. Let's go back to 1815, to the year when Nathan Meyer Rothschild made his famous statement, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets." The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. He would go on to brag that in the 17 years he had been in England, he had increased the £20,000 stake given to him by his father 2,500 times to £50 million at the time. The Rothschilds also used their control of the Bank of England to replace the method of shipping gold from country to country and instead used their 5 banks spread across Europe to set up a system of paper debits and credits, the banking system that we have today. And you will soon see how this is extremely bad news for you and me. By the end of the century, a period of time that was known as the Age of the Rothschilds, it is estimated that the Rothschild family controlled half the wealth of the world. Just remember, this is a single family. There was one thing that went slightly wrong for the Rothschilds in this year, and this was the Congress of Vienna, which started in September 1814 and concluded in June of that year. The reason for this Congress of Vienna was for the Rothschilds to create a form of world government to give them complete political control over much of the civilized world. Just so that you know that they have been trying for a very long time. Many of the European governments were in debt to the Rothschilds, so they figured they could use that as a bargaining tool. However, the Tsar Alexander I of Russia, who had not succumbed to a Rothschild central bank, would not go along with the plan, so the Rothschilds' world government plan failed. This was of course a huge problem, and steps would have to be taken to resolve this issue for the Rothschilds. Totally enraged by this, Nathan Meyer Rothschild swore that same day he or his descendants would destroy the Tsar Alexander I's entire family and descendants. Unfortunately, he was true to his words, and 102 years later, Rothschild-funded Bolsheviks would act upon that very promise. Interestingly enough, the world government fanatic Henry Kissinger did his doctoral dissertation on the Congress of Vienna. For those of you that watched my first video on the New World Order, would see Henry Kissinger featuring in that video. In 1816, the American Congress passed a bill permitting yet another Rothschild-dominated central bank, which gives the Rothschild control of the American money supply again. This is called the Second Bank of the United States and is given a 20-year charter again. The British war against America therefore ends with the deaths of thousands of British and American soldiers, but the Rothschilds get their bank. In 1818, following the French securing massive loans in 1817 in order to help rebuild after their disastrous defeat at Waterloo, the Rothschilds' agents bought vast amounts of French government bonds, causing their value to increase. On November 5th of that year, they dumped the whole lot on the open market, causing their value to plummet and France to go into a financial panic. The Rothschilds then stepped in to take control of the French money supply. This was the same year the Rothschilds were able to loan £5 million to the Prussian government. In the early 1800s in Germany, Jews were granted equal rights as citizens in the German provinces, causing the 1819 Hep Hep riots as anti-Semitism boiled over towards the Rothschilds and several other Jewish families. The Rothschilds became known for their excessive interest rates. In 1821, Karl Mayer Rothschild was sent to Naples, Italy. He would end up doing a lot of business with the Vatican, and Pope Gregory XVI subsequently conferred upon him the Order of St. George. Also, whenever the Pope received Kalman, he would give him his hand rather than the customary toe to kiss, which showed the extent of Kalman's power over the Vatican. The Emperor of Austria in 1822 made the 5 Rothschild brothers barons. Nathan Meyer Rothschild, however, chose not to take up the title. In 1823, the Rothschilds take over the financial operations of the Catholic Church worldwide. I am sure that many of you did not know this. In 1827, Sir Walter Scott publishes his 9-volume set, The Life of Napoleon, and in volume 2 he states that the French Revolution was planned by the Illuminati and Adam Weishaupt, and was financed by the money changers of Europe, the Rothschilds. In 1832, President Andrew Jackson, the seventh President of the United States from 1829 to 1837, runs a campaign for his second term in office under the slogan, Jackson and no banks. This is in reference to his plan to take the control of the American money system to benefit the American people, not for the profiteering of the Rothschilds. In 1833, President Andrew Jackson starts to remove the government deposits from the Rothschild-controlled Second Bank of the United States, and instead deposits them into banks directed by Democratic bankers. This obviously caused the Rothschilds to panic, and so they do what they do best, contract the money supply, causing a depression. President Jackson knows what they are up to and later states, "You are a den of thieves, vipers, and I intend to rout you out, and by the eternal God I will rout you out. I wish we could have him on our side today." In 1834, the Italian revolutionary leader Giuseppe Mazzini is selected by the Illuminati to direct their revolutionary program throughout the world and would serve in that capacity until he died in 1872. In 1835, on January 30th, an assassin tries to shoot President Jackson, but miraculously both of the assassin's pistols misfired. President Jackson would later claim that he knew the Rothschilds were responsible for that attempted assassination. He is not the only one. The assassin, Richard Lawrence, who was found not guilty by reason of insanity, later bragged that powerful people in Europe had hired him and promised to protect him if he were caught. The Rothschilds acquired the rights in the Almeidan quicksilver mines in Spain. This was at the time the biggest concession in the world, and as quicksilver was a vital component in the refining of gold or silver, this gave the Rothschilds a virtual world monopoly. In 1836, following his years of fighting against the Rothschilds and their central bank in America, President Andrew Jackson finally succeeded in throwing the Rothschild central bank out of America, when the bank's charter is not renewed. It would not be until 1913 that the Rothschilds would be able to set up their third central bank in America, the Federal Reserve. And to ensure no mistakes are made, this time they will put one of their own bloodline, Jacob Schiff, in charge of the project. In this year, Nathan Meyer Rothschild dies, and the control of his bank, N.M. Rothschild & Sons, is passed on to his younger brother, James Meyer Rothschild. In 1837, the Rothschilds sent one of their own, August Belmont, to America to salvage their banking interests defeated by President Andrew Jackson. In 1840, the Rothschilds become the Bank of England's bullion brokers. They set up agencies in California and Australia. In 1841, President John Tyler, the 10th President of the United States from 1841 to 1845, vetoed the act to renew the charter for the Bank of the United States. He goes on to receive hundreds of letters threatening him with assassination. The poor guy. In 1844, Solomon Meyer Rothschild purchases the United Coal Mines of Witkovic, an Austro-Hungarian blast furnace company that would go on to be one of the top 10 global industrial concerns. Benjamin Disraeli, who would go on to become the British Prime Minister twice, published Coningsby, in which he characterized Nathan Meyer Rothschild as the Lord and Master of the money markets of the world, and of course virtually Lord and Master of everything else. He literally held the revenues of southern Italy in pawn, and monarchs and ministers of all countries courted his advice and were guided by his suggestions. The great American patriot, Andrew Jackson, the seventh President of the United States, then dies in 1845. Before his death, he asks what he regarded as his greatest achievement. He replies without hesitation, "I killed the bank." This is in reference to the fact he banished the Rothschild's second bank of the United States in 1836. In 1847, Lionel de Rothschild, now married to the daughter of his uncle Kalman Meyer de Rothschild, remember they all intermarried each other, is elected to the parliamentary seat for the city of London. A requirement for entering parliament was to take an oath in the true faith of a Christian. Lionel de Rothschild refused to do this as he was Jewish, and his seat in Parliament remained empty for 11 years until new oaths were allowed. He must have been an invaluable representative for his constituency, bearing in mind he could never vote on any bill as he never entered Parliament. I wonder how he managed to keep his parliamentary seat for 11 years. Just think about that, people. In 1848, Karl Marx publishes the Communist Manifesto. Interestingly, at the same time as he was working on this, Karl Ritter of Frankfurt University was writing the antithesis, which would form the basis for Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche's Nietzscheanism. This Nietzscheanism was later developed into fascism and then into Nazism, and was used to foment the First and Second World Wars. Mark Ritter and Nietzsche were all funded and under the instruction of the Rothschilds. The idea was that those who direct the overall conspiracy could use the differences in those two so-called ideologies to enable them to divide larger and larger factions of the human race into opposing camps, so that they could be armed and then brainwashed into fighting and destroying each other, and particularly to destroy all political and religious institutions. The same plan put forward by Weishaupt in 1776. Please take note of this. This is a very important part of this video and key to the future of the world and the current state of South Africa. In 1849, Gutle Schnapper, Maya Amschel Rothschild's wife, dies. Before her death, she would nonchalantly say, "If my sons did not want wars, there would be none." In 1850, construction begins in that decade on the manor house of Mentmore in England and Ferrers in France. More Rothschild's manors will follow throughout the world, all of them filled with works of art. Jacob James Rothschild in France is said to be worth 600 million francs, which at the time was 150 million francs more than all the other bankers in France put together. In 1852, N.M. Rothschilds & Sons, the business originally started, begins refining gold and silver for the Royal Mint and the Bank of England and other international customers. In 1853, Nathaniel de Rothschild, the son-in-law of Jacob James Meyer Rothschild, purchases Chateau Braine Mouton, the Bordeaux vineyard in Mouton, and renames it Chateau Mouton Rothschild. Between 1854 and 1855, many of the people in the Rothschild dynasty passes on. Amschel Meyer Rothschild dies, Solomon Meyer Rothschild dies, and Karlman Karl Meyer Rothschild dies during this time. In 1858, Lionel de Rothschild finally takes his seat in Parliament, when the requirement to take an oath in the true faith of a Christian is broadened to include other oaths. He becomes the first Jewish member of the British Parliament. Think about that for a moment. In 1861, President Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States from 1816 till his assassination in 1865, approaches the big banks in New York to try to obtain loans to support the ongoing American Civil War. As these large banks were heavily under the influence of the Rothschilds, they offer him a deal they know he cannot accept. 24% to 36% interest on all monies loaned. Lincoln is very angry about this high level of interest, and so he prints his own debt-free money and informs the public that this is now legal tender for both public and private debts. By April of 1862, $449 million worth of Lincoln's debt-free money has been printed and distributed. He states of this, "We gave the people of this republic the greatest blessing they ever had, their own paper money to pay their own debts." That same year, the Times of London publishes a story containing the following statement: "If that mischievous financial policy which had its origin in the North American Republic should become enduring down to a fixture, then that government will furnish its own money without cost. It will pay off debts and be without a debt. It would have all the money necessary to carry on its commerce. It will become prosperous beyond precedent in the history of civilized governments of the world. the brains and the wealth of all countries will go to North America. That government must be destroyed or it will destroy every monarchy on the globe. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln discovers the Tsar of Russia, Alexander II, was having problems with the Rothschilds as well as he was refusing their continual attempts to set up a central bank in Russia. The Tsar then gives President Lincoln some unexpected help. The Tsar issued orders that if either England or France actively intervened in the American Civil War and helped the South, Russia would consider such action a declaration of war and take the side of President Lincoln. To show that he wasn't messing about, he sent part of his Pacific Fleet to port in San Francisco and another part to New York. The Rothschilds' banking house in Naples, Italy, CM de Rothschild in Figli, closes following the unification of Italy. The Rothschilds used one of their own in America, John D. Rockefeller, to form an oil business called Standard Oil, which eventually takes over all of its competition. Here, the Rockefellers entered the fray. So far in the story, we have the Oppenheimers, the Rothschilds, and the Rockefellers involved. In 1864, Rothschild's August Belmont, who by now is the Democratic Party's national chairman, supports General George McClellan as the Democratic nominee to run against President Abraham Lincoln in this year's election. Much to the anger of Belmont, President Lincoln wins the election. Following a brief training period in the Rothschilds' London bank, Jacob Schiff, a Rothschild born in a house in Frankfurt, arrives in America at the age of 18, with instructions and the finance necessary to buy into a banking house there. The purpose of this was to carry out the following tasks. 1. Gain control of America's money system through the establishment of a central bank. 2. Find desirable men who for a price would be willing to serve as stooges for the Illuminati and promote them into high places in the federal government, the Congress, Supreme Court, and all federal agencies. 3. Create minority group strife throughout the nation, particularly targeting the whites and blacks. 4. Create a movement to destroy religion in the United States, with Christianity as the main target. Nathaniel de Rothschild becomes Member of Parliament for Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. In 1868, Jacob James Meyer Rothschild dies shortly after purchasing Chateau Lafite, one of the 4 great Premier Grand Cru estates of France. He is the last of the Meyer Amschel Rothschild sons to die. In 1817, Nathaniel de Rothschild dies, and in 1871, an American general named Albert Pike, who you all should be familiar with, who had been enticed into the Illuminati by Giuseppe Mazzini, completes his military blueprint for 3 world wars and various revolutions throughout the world, culminating into moving this great conspiracy into its final stage. This is where we get to the real crux of the plans of Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati, as executed through the Rothschild family. The First World War is to be fought for the purpose of destroying the Tsar in Russia, as promised by Nathan Meyer Rothschild in 1815. The Tsar is to be replaced with communism, which is to be used to attack religion, predominantly Christianity. The differences between the British and German empires are to be used to foment this war. The Second World War is to be used to foment the controversy between fascism and political Zionism, with the slaughter of Jews in Germany a linchpin in bringing hatred against the German people. This is designed to destroy fascism, which the Rothschilds created, and increase the power of political Zionism. This war is also designed to increase the power of communism to the level that it equaled that of united Christendom. All of these plans were perfectly achieved. The Third World War, and one that should be of great interest to all of us, is to be played out by stirring up hatred of the Muslim world for the purposes of playing the Islamic world and the political Zionists off against one another. Whilst this is going on, the remaining nations would be forced to fight themselves into a state of mental, physical, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. I am sure a state that many people across the world during lockdown can feel right now. In August 15th of that year, Albert Pike writes a letter now catalogued in the British Museum to Giuseppe Mazzini, in which he states the following: "We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we shall provoke a great social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to all nations the effects of absolute atheism, the origins of savagery and of most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the people will be forced to defend themselves against the world minority of the world revolutionaries, and will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitudes delusioned with Christianity, whose spirits will be from that moment without direction and leadership, and anxious for an ideal, but without knowledge where to send its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view, a manifestation which will result from a general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time." Pike, who had been elected as Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry Southern Jurisdiction in 1859, was the most powerful Freemason in America. He would retain that post for 32 years until his death in 1891. He also published a book on the subject in 1872 entitled Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, in which he candidly states the following: "Lucifer the light bearer, Lucifer the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable blinds feeble, sensual and selfish souls? Doubt it not." In 1872, prior to Giuseppe Mazzini's death this year, he makes another revolutionary leader named Adrian Lemmy his successor. Lemmy will be subsequently succeeded by Lenin and Trotsky, then by Stalin. The revolutionary activists of all these men are financed by the Rothschilds. In 1873, the Rio Tinto copper mine in Spain, that was making a loss at the time, is purchased by a group of foreign financiers, including the Rothschilds. These mines represent Europe's largest source of copper. In 1875, on the 1st of January of that year, Jacob Schiff, now Solomon Loop's son-in-law, after marrying his daughter Teresa, takes control of the banking house Kuhn, Loeb & Co. He goes on to finance John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company, Edward R. Harriman's railroad empire, and Andrew Carnegie's steel empire. This is all with Rothschild's money. He then identifies the other largest bankers in America at that time. They are J.P. Morgan, who controls Wall Street, and the Drexels and the Biddles of Philadelphia. All the other financiers, big and little, dance to the music of those three houses. Schiff then gets the European Rothschilds to set up European branches of these three large banks, on the understanding that Schiff, and therefore Rothschilds, is to be the boss of banking in New York and therefore America. N.M. Rothschilds and Sons undertake a share issue to raise capital for the first Channel Tunnel project to link France to England, with half of its capital coming from the Rothschilds-owned Compagnie de Chemin du Fer du Nord. This year, Lionel de Rothschild also loans Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli the finance for the British government to purchase a share in the Suez Canal from Khedive Said of Egypt. This was done as the Rothschilds needed this access route to be held by a government they controlled, so they could use that government's military to protect their huge business interest in the Middle East. In 1876, Otto von Bismarck states, "The division of the United States into two federations of equal force was decided long before the Civil War by the high financial power of Europe. These bankers were afraid that the United States, if they remained in one bloc and as one nation, would attain economical and financial independence, which would upset their financial domination of the world. The voice of the Rothschilds predominated. They foresaw the tremendous booty if they could substitute two feeble democracies indebted to the financiers, to the vigorous republic, confident and self-providing. Therefore they started their emissaries in order to exploit the question of slavery and thus dig an abyss between the two parts of the republic." In 1879, Lionel de Rothschild dies. In 1880, Rothschild's agents begin fomenting a series of pogroms, predominantly in Russia, but also in Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania. These pogroms resulted in the slaughter of thousands of innocent Jews, causing approximately 2 million to flee, mainly to New York, but also to Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, and Los Angeles. The reason these pogroms were initiated was to create a large Jewish base in America, who, when they arrived, would be educated to register as Democrat voters. Some 20 years later, this would result in a massive Democratic power base in the United States and be used to elect Rothschild's frontmen such as Woodrow Wilson to the presidency to carry out the bidding of the Rothschilds. In 1881, President James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States, who lasted only 100 days, states 2 weeks before he is assassinated, "Whoever controls the volume of money in our country is absolute master of all industry and commerce." And when he realizes that the entire system is very easily controlled one way or another by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate. Edmund James de Rothschild has a son, Maurice de Rothschild, to continue this dynasty. In 1883, after 6,000 feet of tunnel in the Channel Tunnel project being excavated, the British government halts the project, citing the fact that it would be a threat to Britain's security. In 1885, Nathaniel Rothschild, son of Lionel de Rothschild, becomes the first Jewish peer and is taken the title of Lord Rothschild. In 1886, the French Rothschild Bank, the Rothschild Frères, obtains substantial amounts of Russia's oil fields and forms the Caspian and Black Sea Petroleum Company, which quickly becomes the world's second largest oil producer. In 1887, opium trafficker in China Edward Albert Sassoon marries Aline Caroline de Rothschild, the granddaughter of Jacob James Meyer Rothschild. Aline Caroline's father, Gustave, together with his brother Alphonse, took over the Rothschilds' French arm following their father Jacob's death. The Rothschilds then financed the amalgamation of the Kimberley diamond mines in South Africa. They subsequently become the biggest shareholders of this company, De Beers, and mined precious stones in Africa and India. At this stage, I want to ask you to please subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon so that you can get notifications for new videos. I will still do videos specifically on the amalgamation of the Kimberley diamond mines and how the Rothschilds played a role in handing over that power to the Oppenheimers. In 1891, the British Labour leader makes the following statements on the subject of the Rothschilds. "This blood-sucking crew has been the cause of untold mischief and misery in Europe during the present century, and has piled up its prodigious wealth chiefly through fomenting wars between states which ought never to have quarrelled. Whenever there is trouble in Europe, wherever rumours of war circulate and men's minds are distraught with fear of change and calamity, you may be sure that a Rothschild is at his games somewhere near the region of the disturbance." Comments like this worry the Rothschilds, and towards the end of the 1800s they purchase Reuters news agency so they can have some control of the media. In 1895, Edmund James de Rothschild, the youngest son of Jacob James Meyer Rothschild, visits Palestine and subsequently supplies the funds to fund the first Jewish colonies there. This is to further their long-term objective of creating a Rothschild-owned country. In 1897, the Rothschilds found the Zionist Congress to promote Zionism, a political movement with the sole aim of moving all Jews into a singularly Jewish nation-state, and arranged its first meeting in Munich. However, due to extreme opposition from local Jews who are quite happy where they are, this meeting has to be moved to Basel, Switzerland, and takes place on the 29th of August. The meeting is chaired by Theodor Herzl, who would state in his diaries, "It is essential that the suffering of Jews become worse. This will assist in realization of our plans. I have an excellent idea. I shall induce anti-Semites to liquidate Jewish wealth. The anti-Semites will assist us thereby in that they will strengthen the persecution and oppression of Jews. The anti-Semites shall be our best friends." Herzl is subsequently elected president of the Zionist organization, which adopts the Rothschild's red hexagram or sign, as the Zionist flag, which 51 years later will end up as the flag of Israel. Edward Henry Harriman becomes a director of the Union Pacific Railroad and goes on to take control of the Southern Pacific Railroad. This is all financed by the Rothschilds. In 1901, the Jews from the colonies set up in Palestine by Edmund James the Rothschild send a delegation to him which tells him, if you wish to save the Yishuv, the Jewish settlement, first take your hands from it, and for once permit the colonists to have the possibility of correcting for themselves what needs correcting. Edmund James the Rothschild is very angry about this and states, I created the Yishuv, I alone, therefore no men, neither colonists nor organizations have the right to interfere in my plans. The Rothschilds' banking house in Frankfurt, Germany, M.A. von Rothschild and Sons, closes as there is no male Rothschild heir to take it on. In 1905, a group of Rothschild-backed Zionist Jews led by George Apollonovich Gapon attempt to overthrow the Tsar in Russia in a communist coup. They fail and are forced to flee Russia only to be given refuge in Germany. The Jewish Encyclopedia states, it is a somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds that at the present time the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure. In 1906, the Rothschilds claimed that due to growing instability in the region and increasing competition from Rockefeller, the Rockefeller family are Rothschild descendants from a female bloodline, own Standard Oil. This is why they sell their Caspian and Black Sea Petroleum Company to Royal Dutch and Shell. This is another example of the Rothschilds trying to hide their true wealth. In 1907, Rothschild's Jacob Schiff, the head of Kuhn, Loeb & Co., in a speech to the New York Chamber of Commerce, warns that unless we have a central bank with adequate control of credit resources, this country is going to undergo the most severe and far-reaching money panic in its history. Suddenly, America finds itself in the middle of another typical run-of-the-mill Rothschild-engineered financial crisis, which ruins the lives of millions of innocent people throughout America and makes billions for the Rothschilds. In 1909, Jacob Schiff founds the National Advancement for the Association of the Colored People. This was done to incite black people into rioting, looting, and other forms of disorder in order to cause a rift between the black and white communities. Jewish historian Howard Shakar states the following in his book, A History of the Jews in America. In 1914, Professor Emeritus Joel Spingham of Columbia University became chairman of the NAACP and recruited for its board such Jewish leaders as Jacob Schiff, Jacob Bilukoff, and Rabbi Stephen Wise. Other co-founders included Julius Rosenthal, Lillian Wald, and Rabbi Emil G. Hirsch. It was not until 1920 that the NAACP appointed its first black president, James Weldon Johnson. In 1911, in his book, Werner Sombart said the Jews and modern capitalism stated that from 1820 on it was the age of the Rothschild and concluded that there was only one power in Europe, and that is Rothschild. In 1912, in the December issue of Truth magazine, George R. Conroy states of banker Jacob Schiff, Mr. Schiff is head of the great private banking house of Kuhn, Loeb & Co., which represents the Rothschilds' interest on this side of the Atlantic. He has been described as financial strategist and has been for years the financial minister of the great impersonal power known as Standard Oil. He was hand in glove with the Harrimans, the Goulds, and the Rockefellers in all their railroad enterprises and has become the dominant power in the railroad and financial power of America. In 1913, on March the 4th, Woodrow Wilson is elected the 28th President of the United States. Shortly after he is inaugurated, he is visited in the White House by Samuel Untermyer of law firm Guggenheim, Untermyer and Marshall, who tries to blackmail him for the sum of $40,000 in relation to an affair Wilson had whilst he was a professor at Princeton University with a fellow professor's wife. President Wilson does not have the money, so Untermyer volunteers to pay the $40,000 out of his own pocket to the woman Wilson had the affair with, on the condition that Wilson promised to appoint to the first vacancy on the United States Supreme Court a nominee to be recommended to President Wilson by Untermyer. Wilson agrees to this. Remember, this is how the Illuminati strategies work. to actually extort things and blackmail people into complying with their wills and wishes. Jacob Schiff sets up the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, in the United States. This organization is formed to slander anyone who questions or challenges the Rothschilds' global conspiracy as anti-Semitic. Very clever indeed. Strangely, the same year that they do this, they also set up the last and current central bank in America, the Federal Reserve. Congressman Charles Lindbergh stated following the passing of the Federal Reserve Act in December 23rd, the act establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. When the president signs this bill, the invisible government of the monetary power will be legalized. The greatest crime of the ages is perpetrated by this banking and currency bill. It is important to note that the Federal Reserve is a private company. It is neither federal nor does it have any reserve. It is conservatively estimated that profits exceeded $150 billion per year, and the Federal Reserve has never once in its history published accounts. In 1914, during the start of World War I, the German Rothschilds loaned money to the Germans. The British Rothschilds loaned money to the British, and the French Rothschilds loaned money to the French. The country of origin matters not. Furthermore, the Rothschilds have control of 3 European news agencies: Wolf in Germany, Reuters in England, and Havas in France. The Rothschilds use Wolf to manipulate the German people into a fervor for war. From around this time, the Rothschilds are rarely reported in the media because they own the media. In 1916, on June the 4th, Louis Dembitz Brandeis is appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States by President Wilson, as per his agreement blackmail payment to Samuel Untermyer some 3 years earlier. Justice Brandeis is also the elected leader of the Executive Committee for Zionist Affairs, a position he has held since 1914. In the middle of World War I, Germany was winning the war as they were being financed by the Rothschilds to a greater extent than France, Italy, and England, because Rothschilds did not want to support the Tsar in Russia, and of course Russia was on the same side as France, Italy, and England. Then a significant event occurred. Germany, although they were winning the war and not one foreign soldier had set foot on their soil, offered armistice to Britain with no requirement or reparations. The Rothschilds were anxious to make sure this didn't happen, as they were expecting to make far more money off this war, so they played another card they had up their sleeve. Whilst the British were considering Germany's offer, Rothschild's agent Louis Brandeis sent a Zionist delegation from America to Britain to promise to bring America into the war on the side of the British, provided the British agreed to give the land of Palestine to the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds wanted Palestine for the following reason. They had great business interests in the Far East and desired their own state in that area along with their own military, which they could use as an aggressor to any state that threatened those interests. The British subsequently agreed to the deal for Palestine, and the Zionists in London contacted their counterparts in America and informed them of this fact. Suddenly, all the major newspapers in America that up to that point had been pro-German turned on Germany, running propaganda pieces such as German soldiers were killing Red Cross nurses, German soldiers were cutting off babies' hands, etc., in order to manipulate the American public against the Germans. In that same year, President Woodrow Wilson ran a re-election campaign under the slogan, "Re-elect the man who will keep your sons out of war." On December 12th of that year, Germany and her allies offered peace terms to end the war. Because of Germany's offer of peace, the Rothschilds' war machine goes into overdrive in America, spreading propaganda which leads to President Wilson, under the instructions of American Zionist leader and Supreme Court Justice Louis Dembitz Brandeis, reneging on his promise to the electorate and taking America into the First World War on April 6th. As per the Rothschilds' promise to the British to take America into the war, they decide they want something in writing from the British to prove that they will uphold their side of the bargain. The British Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour therefore drafts a letter which is commonly known as the Balfour Declaration. This declaration read, "Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this objective, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine or the rights and political statutes enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours sincerely, Arthur James Balfour. Next, the Rothschilds order the execution by the Bolsheviks they control of Tsar Nicholas II and his entire family in Russia. I recently watched the movie on that, and it was quite shocking what happened at the time. This is both to get control of the country and an act of revenge for Tsar Alexander I blocking the world government plan in 1815 at the Congress of Vienna, and Tsar Alexander II siding with President Abraham Lincoln in 1864. The Rothschilds make sure that they get rid of their enemies, and they will wait a long time to do so. It was extremely important for them to slaughter the entire family, including women and children, in order to make good on the promise to do so made by Nathan Meyer Rothschild in 1815. It is designed to show the world what happens if you ever attempt to cross the Rothschilds. U.S. Congressman Oscar Callaway informs Congress that J.P. Morgan is a Rothschild front and has taken control of the American media industry. He states in March 1915 that J.P. Morgan interest, the steel shipbuilding and powder interest, and their subsidiary organizations got together 12 men high up in the newspaper world and employed them to select the most influential newspapers in the United States, and sufficient number of them to control generally the policy of the daily press. They found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought to be paid for by the month. An editor was furnished for each paper to properly supervise and edit information regarding the questions of preparedness, militarism, financial policies, and other things of national and international nature, considered vital to the interest of the purchasers. In 1919, January, Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg are killed as they attempt to lead another Rothschild-funded communist coup, this time in Berlin, Germany. The Versailles Peace Conference is held to decide reparations that the Germans need to pay to the victors following the end of the First World War. A delegation of 117 people headed up by Bernard Baruch bring up the subject of the promise of the Palestine for them. At this point, the Germans realized why America had turned on them and under whose influence, the Rothschilds. Although at this stage in the world history, the initial Rothschild family, father of the Rothschild family, and the initial 5 sons have all died off, the influence of the Rothschild dynasty lived on, and the real bloodline exists up until today. It is important to note that the Rothschild family has influenced the lives of people in South Africa for many, many decades, that they have funded all the institutions, both secret and open, to fulfill their every wants and wishes. The only purpose of the money that the Rothschild family have made available for the Bavarian Illuminati ideals is to establish a new world order, a one world government with a one world leader, to take away all normal religions and establish a one world religion. Today it is easy to say that the Rothschild dynasty has ended, that the initial Rothschild family and all their ideas have died down with them, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Most of the media houses today, including all those in South Africa, have got some form of involvement with the Rothschilds. Their influence in De Beers and Anglo-American and many of the other mining companies, their influence in Eskom, their influence in Naspers, their influence with the Ruperts, the influence with all the major and richest families in the country, then we're not even touching on the politicians, is clear and there for everyone to see. In my next video, I will cover the Rothschilds' influence in the build-up to the Second World War, as well as their influence up until today in detail. Because of time restrictions, I had to cut this into two separate segments. I encourage all of you to go and do your own research. Look at what is happening around you in the world today and see how the Bavarian Illuminatis illuminated and Illuminatis from around the world that believe in the New World Order ideals are living out and pushing for those ideals to be established in the schooling system, in the media system, in the filming system, in all facets of society, and the capture of political leaders of a country as well as the judiciary, just as they did in America and many other countries. The Rothschild fortune today cannot be calculated. Their fortune never lied in money. It always lied in power and absolute control, a need and greed that they handed over to many people that they worked with. All of their pawns and people, like those in our government, have ascribed to their philosophies because it brings you untold wealth and power. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. The current state of lockdown that we find ourselves in has given a select few ultimate power when it was not due to them. We are all currently still living under the influence of the Rothschild family in some way, mean, or form. The next time you go to the shop to purchase something, or the next time you make use of a bank, do some research and find out who you are actually funding. In South Africa, because of our diversity, because most of the people are conservative and religious, we have a chance to fight the system. Please subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications, and go and watch the past 00 days and also the Question Everything videos. If you are a new subscriber, please go to my channel and go to the playlist section where you will see the videos in order. I know this video was long, but all the information is necessary for you to get a clear picture of the foe that we have to fight, and prepare yourself to become as independent of the Rothschild systems and the Illuminati systems as possible. You need to understand the foe that you are fighting. Make yourself as independent of government as you can. This is a starting point. The next thing we need to do is elect our government officials directly.